Each year you do it again. Now, people, oh my gosh, every single year. Yes, unfortunately it is every single year. But think about what is changing from one year to the next. From one year to the next, you're changing the income year you're reporting. That's the first thing. And the second thing you're changing potentially are your family dynamics. Maybe in 1819, one child's going to college. But maybe by 2021, there'll be 3 of them in college. Well, you would want those kinds of changes to be reflected in the data you're providing and in what the college is considering from a need-based perspective. It's not the same paying for 3 in college as it is paying for 1 in college. So that's why every year you do it again. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is there is a renewal version of the forms that you can do from one year to the next. So once you've done the original filing, in subsequent years, you do the renewal version, which is basically tell us what's changed from the year before. And that makes it a little bit simpler to do. Big question I get, how complicated are these silly forms? And the answer is, they're not so much complicated as tedious. You just kind of have to say to yourself, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to go from question 1 all the way through. And you'll discover a lot of the stuff is not all that complex. Student, what is your name? What is your address? What's your email address? What's your driver's license number? None of that's terribly complicated, but it's just, I got to do it. Okay, I need to answer this one, I need to answer this one, so on. But you'll do it every year, and after doing it, you will get that EFC. And the EFC is a 6-digit number, and when you get it, you want to read it for the number you see in front of you. So if you have all zeros in front of you for an EFC, that means this student has 0 family capacity to pay for a year of college, meaning they are maximally eligible for need-based aid. The highest EFC that comes out of this formula is 6 nines. And read it for exactly what you think 6 nines mean. Because they don't have room for $1 million, they stop at 6 nines. And that's what that means, that this family has the capacity to pay up to or greater than $1 million for a year of college. And everybody's EFC is somewhere between those two very wide extremes. As you might guess, the closer you are to the zeros, the more need-based eligibility the student shows. The closer you are to all the nines, either the less eligibility or none at all. But you have to also look at that number in comparison to school cost structure. Because if you don't have that, you don't know what it really means. So if I toss out, 0, 5, 0, 0, 0, 0, well, okay, that's 50,000. What does that mean at the end of the day? It means at some schools, that's more than the cost to go there. But at other schools, that's less than the cost to go there. So depending upon the school you're comparing it to, you get 2 entirely different answers. That's why you have to have both factors. I'm often asked by families, is there a magical income number that if I make that much or more, I shouldn't bother filling the forms out? And the fairest answer is, not really. Because a lot of things go into the final outcome of that EFC. It is not just income. There's the asset world, there's the family size, there's how many are going to college. Maybe there are 12 of you in the household. And maybe 6 of the kids are going to college at once. Well, that's a whole lot different comparing an income number to that exact same income number with an only child in a family of 3. You have to have all the factors to be able to say, yeah, do it. No, not going to do it. And we were having a discussion at lunch, and I think that at the end of the day, if you own your own town or television station, you probably will not need to fill the forms out, but hey, you never know. Okay? And we've had those situations come up, by the way. Now, switching gears to merit. Merit, now we don't care about financial factors. We're looking at the student, and we're looking at the student's meritorious characteristics. And I would roll into this the world of athletic aid as well. Because athletic aid is the meritorious athletic capacity of the student. That's why they're being offered an athletic scholarship. Now, it does not come through the same process as other merit does, but it's still awarded on the basis of merit. Okay? I used to work in Tennessee, and I would say to people, do you really think Archie and Olivia couldn't have paid for Peyton or Eli to go to college? The answer was, of course they could have. Did Eli or Peyton have to pay to go to college? No, they didn't. Why was that? Because they had the merit of being the quarterbacks they were. So, there's a merit component to athletics as well. And merit is as broadly defined as any school you could possibly find out there. There are tons of reasons that schools say this constitutes merit. So it's always good for students if they have found a school that A, they're interested in, and B, that has a merit scholarship program, to then look for C, are any of these possibly me? And if so, how then do I get considered for the merit this school offers? What have I got to do as a potential applicant to get considered? Maybe it's nomination. So if I don't get nominated, they don't consider me. Maybe I have to apply in some form or fashion. And if I don't apply, again, they don't consider me. Or, in some cases, by applying for admission, the school finds the candidates. And there are a number of schools that say, we use your admission application to make merit selections. So this is when I tell students, you don't want to do a bad job on your admission application, because that could also be your merit application. So don't cut corners or press toward the deadline. And we know deadlines for some of the early action programs are upon us. Don't press. Do it right, because at some schools, the data you put on that admission application could also be how they screen you for merit. So take advantage of that. But it's important for the student to know, must I be nominated? Must I do some form of application? Or are you guys going to find me when I apply for admission? And in some schools, they do a mixture of all of those. These are the ones you have to be nominated for. These are the ones you have to apply for. But these are the ones we find you for. Okay, great. And as I said earlier, there are some schools where they don't do specifically merit scholarships. And so, boy, I don't see any merit scholarships on Yale's website. You are correct. You don't. And don't go to Harvard or Princeton's website either. You're not going to find them there. Because, again, as I said earlier, the merit is in the admission. And then they work from a need-based perspective after that. Now, in the typical award we offer to a student, whether it's need or merit or a combination of the two, there's only 3 ways we can put money in a student's hands to help them pay for college. We start by giving money, gift aid, grants or scholarships. Hey, student, you qualify for X. Now, we don't even ask a student, do you want this? There is no, I accept my merit, or I accept my free money, yes or no. You pretty much take for granted if it's offered to you to help pay, and it doesn't require you to work for it or borrow it, you're going to take it. So there's that realm. Now, the sources could be very broad in terms of where they come from. Could be because the student qualifies on the basis of federal criteria. I know here in Georgia you've got state-based gift aid students qualify for. They have to meet certain criteria to get it and to keep it. Could be because the school itself has funds it's awarding, whether they be merit or need. The student gets those. So gift aid, that's where we start. In many cases, we're not able to cover all of a student's eligibility just through gift aid. So then we turn to what we call the self-help programs, which is exactly what it means. Students, here are a couple of ways you can help yourself pay for college. Number 1, are you interested in working? And this is an option now. We're saying, student, yes, no, would you want a job? And the average type of job is designed to give the student some money for their stuff, but not to be a full-time employee. So on our campus, our students would say to you, I probably do 5 to 8 hours per week. And I earn X amount per hour, and if I do all those hours, I'm going to earn roughly a couple of $1,000s over the course of the school year. and that $2,000 I earn, I'm going to use mostly for my stuff. It doesn't pay my bill, and when I start school, I haven't worked yet, so I can't buy my books when I come in the fall, but I'm going to use it over the course of my working to buy my stuff with. And most jobs are exactly that way. As you earn the hours, you get paid, you use that for your ongoing expenses. So that's a second potential way we can get aid to a student. The third one is where sometimes people get a little less comfortable, and that is, students, are you interested in borrowing money? So students, we are offering you a loan, and typically it is to the student, him or herself, and are you interested in borrowing? Yes, no. And then that becomes a real decision point. Am I interested as a student in being a borrower, knowing that I have to be repaid and at some rate of interest going forward in the future? Now, keeping in mind that repayment in some loan programs can be service related. If I borrow X and I work Y, each year I work Y, I get so much of my loan forgiven. Now, it's not the same as making a monthly payment, but if I don't do the service, I don't get the forgiveness. So there's the loan world. And I think I've always recommended that families have a conversation about borrowing. How do you, the student, feel about being a lender? Being a borrower. If you're lent money, or if you're offered a loan, how do you feel about taking it? Yes or no? Are you good with that? Not so good with that? Maybe only up to a certain point. I don't want to go beyond that. I mean, all those are potential discussions you could have, because it's not uncommon that when a school pulls together its determination of aid eligibility, it puts all three of those components in there. A little bit of this, some of that, and how do you feel about taking all or part of what you're being offered? And we never want students to borrow either out of desperation or ignorance. Those are bad borrowing characteristics. We would want them to be fully cognizant of, yes, I'm choosing to borrow, and choosing to borrow, I understand the future obligation to do it. And I think if you don't have that conversation, that can come back to surprise people. When we used to do this in the paper world, we would have an annual meeting at the start of the school year, room similar to this, and we would hand out all of those promissory note copies that every student needed to have. We would highlight where all the signatures went, and we'd say, okay, now you have 2 copies of this in front of you. You're going to keep one. You're going to sign one, give it back to us. Now, please, and we'd go over the basics of the promissory note. Now, when you see it, all the highlighted areas, initial where it says for initial, sign where it says to sign. And some students could not bring themselves to do that. It would just freeze right there. The pen wouldn't move. And you're like, okay, okay, did you ever finish? I mean, some of them like, what did I just do? I don't know, but here, take your paper. Okay. Others would say, yes, can I call home first? I say, well, yeah, you can. Just remember, if you don't transact this loan, the dollars that are showing up as having paid your bill from this loan go away, and now your bill goes up by the exact same amount. Okay. And you're thinking, you've known you've had a loan since June. It's now late August. And it suddenly dawns on you, oh my gosh, I'm obligating myself to pay money back. Nowadays, it's E. It's all an E process. So it's a heck of a lot easier. And by the way, the FSA ID the student has is how they sign their electronic promissory note for federal loans. So I would say make sure you, as a family, are comfortable with the world of borrowing, and that your student understands the implications, so they're not caught off guard when the time comes. Just my recommendation, because it can be one of those moments. Okay. Question I have been asked: what if my child is not yet 18? When they start college, if they sign a promissory note, do we get to say they were too young to obligate themselves? It's actually called defensive infancy. That's the term. That's the legal term. The answer is no. There is no defensive infancy on student loans. If they were old enough to finish high school, they were old enough to sign a promissory note. Now, let's look at some samples of how this all works. Okay. And there's one actual example up there. I'll let you guess which one it is. And there are two representative samples, okay? And you can see three very different cost structures, okay? Actual, in-state, and since the state of Georgia is in the academic common market, then that could also apply to other schools who are also within the academic common market. And then a representative private university. Now, if your student here in Georgia has always wanted to be a Tar Heel, that's delightful, but North Carolina is not in the academic common market, therefore they would pay out-of-state tuition. If they've always wanted to go to the University of Washington because Seattle's beautiful, yes it is, but they're not part of the academic common market. I want to go to the University of Michigan, hail, hail, Wolverines. Great, not part of the academic common market. So when you start talking about out-of-state, then you're talking about much different costs, even though they're public institutions. So we have three cost structures. You have filed for need-based aid at all three. You have three different levels of need. And the question simply becomes, how do schools meet that need that is being shown? So we'll start with our private school here. And our private institution starts with a merit scholarship that covers half of the need. So very good thing. Half the need is already covered by a merit scholarship. Now the student may want to make sure they understand, to get the merit scholarship and to keep the merit scholarship, are there conditions I must meet? Maybe it's related to a planned academic major. Maybe it's related to some kind of performance on campus. Maybe it's related to some future plans they have that they will have to show they're moving toward. But merit scholarship, then there's some more grant money. So again, we'd assume the student would say, yeah, I'm going to take grant money. But now we're into the world of, are you interested in borrowing a loan, student? It's being offered to you. Are you interested in working, student? That's being offered to you. And the school is able to come up with a total award of 90% of what the student needs. So there's that last 10% of need the school doesn't have its own resources to be able to deal with. Now maybe this is where an outside scholarship comes in, maybe some additional borrowing comes in, or maybe the family is now picking up the difference between the calculation of the family contribution and what the school is able to come up with by way of its total aid. And if so, well, now you're talking about a higher immediate cost. And again, the student says, I'll take the loan. Well, that's going to come due at some point in the future. Our state example here is where the state school, having less need shown, also is able to bring together a lesser total of aid from all three sources, but can meet 100% of the need the student shows. They're not leaving any portion uncovered that the family now has to cope with in addition to the family contribution. They're saying, here's your contribution, here's the aid, and if you accept all of it, we've covered all the need you show. But again, by saying yes here, there becomes that future obligation the student is agreeing to pay when the time comes. Then there's Davidson College. So now I'm going to Davidson mode. So full disclosure, this is Davidson mode now. We have a three-part program for our need-based financial aid, which we call the Davidson Trust. And the Davidson Trust has three basic components. Component number one is when we admit students, we don't look at any financial factors. Not every school can admit everybody who'd like to go there without considering the finances of that student. And there are some schools that say we don't admit everybody who'd like to come because some of the students we just know we couldn't fund properly and we're not going to admit them. And those are schools that are called need aware. And there's some segment of their admission pool they don't admit because they're need aware of those students. We're able to be what we call what is called need blind. So I do not sit in the admission meeting and cough at strategic times. Let's talk about Jody Hester. Excuse me. Let's move on to Marianne Parker. Okay. No. I'm not there for that kind of thing. So we're able to admit everybody who's interested and that we are able to admit who appear to be able to succeed in our institution. So we're need blind. We meet all the need a student shows us. So we meet 100% of their need, as it's been calculated. And the third thing is we meet that 100% need without a loan. We use only work and gift aid. And those three components are our initiative to try and give students from all levels of socioeconomic status the opportunity to enroll at Davidson College. Now, what happens, I think, is sometimes when you start talking about colleges, the conversation focuses here. Okay? Ouch. That's a lot better. OMG. And the family is no longer willing to talk about OMG. You know, child, we love you like the baby you once were, but you are not coming home and talking about school costs, that kind of money. Period. End discussion. Okay. I've put kids in college. You know, we had our heart-to-hearts. Now, son, this is what I'm talking about. Okay. But we would say, don't stop here. Get into here and get into here. Because at the end of the day, you may discover that the schools at the higher end of the cost spectrum also have resources that permit them to work with a wide variety of socioeconomic students. And I think that's something that's important because, yeah, it is easy to say, I get it, you know. And this right now, I hate to tell you this, is not much of an anymore. I'm seeing ones with 7s that lead off the first figure. And not just in the Northeast either. Some of that 7 creep is coming to the Southeast. So they're out there, okay? But find out, what do they do for their students? Can they offer something which at the end of the day, if it's the right school for the student, and that's important, but if it's the right school, does it help make it financially feasible? That's what you would want to see happen, okay? Now, and I'll be honest, if you have any interest in Davidson College, I have some information I'm happy to share with you. It's optional. Glad to have you take some, okay? This one. Okay, consumer tips. You probably have heard of or even been solicited by private consultants who will sign you up as a client, take your student as a client and say, well, we will guide your student all the way through the process. The question is, do you think you need to hire someone outside of the staff already available to you here at Woodward Academy? That's your call to make. You know, I know these people. I trust these people. I hope you feel the same way. But I know there are private consultants who are happy to have clients who will guide you through the whole thing. The question then becomes, are you getting your money's worth for doing it? As I've said to other groups, there are people who swear by their private counselors, and there are those who swear at the private counselors. You know, and you have to kind of decide where you are with that route. But they do exist, and you may have even already heard from some, because they get information about, you know, graduating high school seniors. Scholarship programs that charge a fee to apply. You do not want to do this. I have a colleague whose mantra is, if you're paying more than a postage stamp, you're paying too much to apply. So just something to think about. Still there? I think so. Okay. If you are willing to pay a fee for scholarship, this very afternoon, I will create the War Eagle Book Scholarship. $1,000 to pay for books your child's first year. Only cost you $50 to apply. And all I need is 21 of you to say yes. And if there's any more than 21 of you, I would say thank you. Okay? Because that's typically what fee-based scholarships are. The recycling of some of the fees to fund the scholarship and the rest of the fees funding the individual who created it. So I would say not a good expenditure of your funds. Same thing with scholarship search services. There are companies that will find them for you. Now, do your children know what the internet is? Because if they do, they can find their own without having to pay anybody a fee to find it for them. But there are companies that do this for a living, and we would just say, I don't know that this really is a good way to spend your available resources. So some online resources we always recommend. If you're looking at any given schools, go to their website. So if indeed it's UGA or it's Tech, Valdosta, Emory, Agnes Scott, Barry, whatever the case, go to their website and see what they're showing you by way of their information for the class that your child's going to be in, what deadlines they're working with, what forms they're working with. Look up the information there. Honestly, we can change stuff on our websites on the fly, which is great. So if someone calls up and says, I don't know why you spelled think T-H-N-I-K, we can say, oops, we did a really bad job of proofing, and within the next half hour it will be corrected, versus I'm reading a piece of yours which has T-H-N-I-K in it, and we're thinking we have 13,000 of those sitting back in the office. So it's going to be finick for a while until we're out of those supplies. So always use the website because that's where it can be more contemporary. Also on our websites are what's called a net price calculator. And the net price calculator is exactly what it says, a way to calculate your net price for that institution. And by law, the government requires us to have one. So if you went to our website, I'll use Davidson for an example, you go to our home page, you might even see our football team running across the field with the 2,000 strong across as the promo. You would see a tab that says admission and financial aid, and you click on that. And you go to, ta-da, the admission and financial aid page, where there's a financial aid link, and you click on that. And as part of the financial aid page, you would see net price calculator. At which point, if you clicked on that, it would take you right to our net price calculator, where you could enter your financial data and get back, you ready, a net price figure. And you would say, oh, okay, now I know from a need-based perspective what my estimate of my cost will be and what the institution would be offering by way of its portion. And this could help, especially if you have younger students who are thinking about schools going forward. Good way to begin maybe to look at schools from a financial perspective. Honestly, if you're dealing with a senior right now, your best bet is just do the actual forms. They're available. Get them on file. You'll get some feedback, so might as well just do that. But net price calculators can help in that way. Certainly recommend the Davidson website. It's a wonderful website. Full of great stuff. You would also see on our website our basketball schedule for the upcoming year. We're less than a month away from opening our season. And I say that because I have the privilege of being the public address announcer for our men's basketball team. So I get to sit right there on the sidelines and watch them run by, say things you would never want to hear in the stands. I'll tell you that. Okay? But it's a great location to go. I will just recommend that on the evening of December 1st, if you're not doing anything on Friday night, turn on to the ESPN family of networks at 8 p.m. because we're going to be playing Chapel Hill in Charlotte at the Hornets Arena. Courtside. Probably listening to Coach Roy yell things. So. Oh, by the way, you may not know this if you're a basketball junkie. They've expanded the coaches' boxes this year. So the coaches now have 10 extra feet toward mid-court than they did the year before. So I expect to be saying to coaches, I can't see. Hey, I can't see. So we'll see what happens. StudentAid.gov is a great place to go, especially when you start getting information about federal aid programs your student may be offered. And especially if it's a loan. Hey, interest rates, repayment terms, forgivenesses, forbearances, deferments, all those things, StudentAid.gov. Naturally, here in Georgia, you want to check out what does Georgia have to offer, and that's at georgiafutures.org. Certainly information about Hope and Zell Miller and all the things that are unique to Georgia. Definitely you want to go there, take a look at that, see what's available. The College Board website, a good place to go for general information about the College Board. and about their programs. They talk about careers, they talk about testing, they talk about financial aid, and so on. Scholarship search websites. Students can certainly look for scholarships online, but as I tell students, just remember, if you're going to something like a scholarships.com or fastweb.com, you are not the only human being on planet Earth who found that website. So as a result, it may very well be that while you find the perfect scholarship for you, you are one of 37,213 other people who've also said, oh, that's the perfect scholarship for me. Now, that's different than if I'm graduating from Woodward Academy, and this scholarship is for Woodward Academy graduates. You know pretty much exactly what the numbers look like. Far more so than, oh my gosh, I found the one for me, but am I the only me that found it? No. And just as a gag, I put the word scholarship in Google, and I fried the motherboard of my computer, but it also said that I have over 30 million prospects to look at if I just use the word scholarship. So if your children are going to look for scholarships, they want to be a little more refined as to, I'm looking for scholarship for X or for Y, I have characteristic A or B, and that certainly makes a much more refined search than just, I'm looking for scholarships, unless they want to sort through 30 million plus hits. So you've had no questions so far, which either means I was very lucid or it's Sunday afternoon and you're kind of like tuned out. I get that. But do you have any questions I can answer for you? This is your chance. Please, go ahead.
I actually have two.
Okay.
One, with the FAFSA not getting very specific and not having as many questions as the profile, when do you recommend providing extra information to schools? Do you recommend right away or wait until the package comes?
The honest-to-gosh answer is you could do either. You could choose to send it to the schools in conjunction with the original submission, or you could wait to hear back and then determine, do I still need to provide that?
Okay.
But that would be entirely your decision to make.
Okay, and then my second question real quick is, I have a junior and I also have a freshman in college now, and he's trying to change his residency because he's out of state. And part of changing that residency is becoming an independent, not a dependent on me. So we're filling out the FAFSA now, but they still want parental information. So how can he become an independent person so that he can be a resident of a different state and yet not require my information for the FAFSA?
My gut reaction is to say he probably can't. Now, my question, which I don't have the answer to, is what does that state indicate constitutes independence for residency purpose? And does their definition of independent for residency either mirror or contradict the federal? And that's what I don't know.
Okay.
What state is he looking at?
North Carolina.
Okay. Now, I can tell you what he can do for North Carolina. We now have in North Carolina a centralized residency determination process.
Yes, that's what I have.
So he goes to ncresidency.org and he gets the official notice from them. And that is official. So if that determination says you are a resident, ta-da, you're done. If that determination says you're not a resident, equally ta-da, you're done. But that's how it's working in North Carolina.
Still needs my information on the FAFSA.
He would still require you, because of the federal definition of dependency, yes, there would still have to be FAFSA data provided.
Thank you.
Unless he meets one of those criteria where he can say yes to one of that list. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question. Does the parent's current balance of their own student loans affect the expected financial family contribution to their students?
If you're paying student loans in your own name,
Yes.
there is no place on the FAFSA to put that. That's not a FAFSA question. If you're filing at a profile using school, that is a data element some profile using schools ask for, but not all. But there is a narrative section on the profile where you could put that data down. But a FAFSA-only school is no place to record that information.
So that's
You'd have to send it to the school directly.
Okay. So it wouldn't affect our ability to borrow for him?
Potentially.
Potentially it could.
It could, depending upon, as you're going through the realm of looking at a federal parent loan,
Okay.
that could have a bearing.
So the recommendation would be to pay down as much as we can between now and...
If you're in a position to do so, certainly,
Okay.
but like I say, if your concern is, how will the school know if I'm doing this? The profile offers a mechanism, but the FAFSA doesn't.
Okay.
Please.
My son already has a FAFSA ID, but
Okay.
I think he used the word email for the verification. What should he do?
He can go in and change that.
Okay.
He should do that before he has his email shut off by the school,
Okay.
so that it doesn't become a
For now,
complication.
it's still good, but change
Yeah.
it sometime.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if it's submitted,
Pardon?
even if the application was already signed?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine?
Yeah, he would just need to go through the process of making an adjustment to his ID.
Okay.
But yeah, if it's already signed, don't mess with it. You're good.
Okay.
Because he's still getting his email through the school, so he's okay there.
So change it before he...
Probably before he,
Since it's already...
before he files for 1920.
Okay.
How long after graduation do they turn things off?
Their Woodward emails stay live for a year.
Okay.
So they graduate in May, and until that following year, it's still active.
Okay, so he would have time before the 1920 filing. Okay. Other questions? Please.
They're probably all different, but do loans typically start after school, or do they defer and the interest collects and then you start paying this room to go kind of stuff, or how does that work?
You have one of those wonderful "it depends" answers. There are two types of loans currently a student can borrow. There are subsidized loans where the interest is paid by the government while they're in school, and there are unsubsidized loans where the student is responsible for the interest while in school. And if it's an unsubsidized loan where the student is responsible for the interest while in school, they have two options. Option one is they make interest-only payments while enrolled and keep the interest service. Or two, they capitalize the interest, allowing it to accrue, and then pay it off along with the principal when the loan goes into repayment. For most students, they don't go into principal plus interest repayment until they finish. Having said that, remind your student that if they break any regular enrollment period, they could then go into repayment sequence. And I had this happen. I had a family I worked with. Student went freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, they decided this was now time to walk the Appalachian Trail. Perfectly valid thing to do at that age in life. But while they were out walking the Appalachian Trail, they were not a student, and the loans they borrowed in years 1 and 2 went into repayment because they had stopped, they'd broken their enrollment. So then they got into, when I'm in school, I don't have to pay, but anytime I'm out of school, I have to pay again. So you get one grace period, and once that is expired, then any borrowing becomes pay-as-you-go kind of thing. So if a student says, I'm thinking of breaking my enrollment before graduation, there could be complications if they've been a borrower.
If a student takes out a loan, can another family member give the student money to pay it back? Are there any...
There would only be the gift limitations that could potentially enter into for taxability purposes. As far as the loan's concerned, if the loan gets paid, that's great. The source of payment is whatever it may be. But the potential of running into some taxability issues because of the amount being given to help pay the loan could have a complication. Please.
So the statistics on early decision admission are pretty startling and very regular decisions. But if you go ED, you're pretty much doing it blind for any financial aid. Is that true?
I would say that with the net price calculator option, it's less blind than it used to be, because that can help establish at least a general area of eligibility, which would tell you whether or not, from a financial perspective, early decision still makes sense, or no, we need to keep the options open. The other thing about early decision, which generally speaking is you won't know about merit. So if a merit scholarship offer is going to help dictate an enrollment decision, at early decision, really there's no merit yet extended, because the merit tends to be for all students across all types of admission. A lot of factors to think about. If you can't say, child, if you're in, you're going, then you may have to ask yourself, do I want to leave open the option of considering multiple schools so I get the whole picture before we say yes here or yes there?
I'm glad you made that distinction, because I was under the impression that with early decision, you were more likely to get aid or the scholarship. So then is that more for need-based?
Well, early decision is one of those wonderful it depends answers. Let me tell you why. School A could say early decision means you're coming regardless, so why do I need to worry about financial aid for you? That's one philosophy. Philosophy 2 could be, if you're that willing to come, we're willing to throw cash at you. That could be philosophy 2. Philosophy 3 could be, whether you're early or not, we're going to use the same set of criteria for all students who apply. And it could be a question that if a student is looking at an early decision school, to ask the school itself, what is your philosophy of assistance to early decision students? More, less, no difference. And then you'd have a better sense of how that school would operate. But I've heard stories that there are those schools who say, why bother, you're coming? And those schools who say, oh, but you love us this much, we want to give it to you. And others who say, well, we're going to treat everybody with the same set of equal criteria, and that's how we do ours. So, fair question to ask the school. Please.
Is there a way to figure out what that? I've heard people get money through the ACT testing. I don't know if there's a way to figure out.
It is possible that some schools use ACT test scores as a way to make a merit determination. I mean, I have seen some schools on their net price calculator that ask for test scores and GPAs, which have nothing to do with need-based, but they ask for them anyway. And these particular schools have a very formulaic way of making a merit decision. That test score A plus grade point B equals award C. And that's their philosophy of merit. If I have this plus this, you get that. Other schools say we're going to look at it much more holistically. Nice to have certain grades, nice to have certain test scores, but until we look at the whole picture, we're not going to be able to say yes, you're merit or you're not. So it's possible there are some formulaic schools that say, show us this score, we'll show you this scholarship. I can't say that's impossible. Now, who they are specifically, I can say I don't know, but I do know that I'm sure there are some schools out there that's how they do merit.
University of Alabama is one that does it that way.
Okay.
Either ACT or SAT.
And again, like I said earlier about merit, you're going to see as many different philosophies of what constitutes merit as you're probably going to see schools. And I know Alabama is very generous toward that National Merit Scholarship recipients. They do a lot of things for those students beyond what the National Merit Program even requires. So, and people say, oh, well, if BAM is doing this for National Merit, is that what you do? The answer is no, we do what the program asks us to do. BAMA has chosen to go beyond the program, but still call it national merit, so that can be a little bit confusing when you start talking terminology.
I was filling out the profile yesterday. There's a question on there that said, how much do you expect to contribute to, just flat out, how much do you expect to contribute to your child's education?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I thought that's what you were trying to help me figure out. What am I supposed to put there?
Basically, you're putting there what you see your capacity as being. It just gives us another data point to work from.
Okay, so it's just as open-ended as I thought.
Mm-hmm. It really is. It's a very open-ended question. Correct. But again, it gives us more data to be able to work with as we work with as much data as possible in making our determinations.
Dave, one question that we get in college counseling a lot, particularly at the end of the cycle in spring of senior year, is how do I go about appealing this package? Should I fax one school what another school's award was? the sort of the bargain hunting of, well, I'm going to send you what this school gave me.
Okay. There is nothing that ever prevents you from sending any school any piece of data you think would be helpful. I have gotten other schools' awards. I have gotten copies of prenuptial agreements. I have gotten copies of trust documents. I have gotten copies of divorce decrees. I have gotten copies of court orders. And sometimes they do make a difference. Other times it's like, thank you for sending this to us. I think we'll probably shred this because we don't really want to have this kicking around. But different schools will have very different philosophies of that. Generally speaking, and when I say generally, because there's always an exception somewhere, generally speaking, the more prestigious institutions do not play let's make a deal. That's just not their philosophy. So, will Harvard want to see what Yale did? No. No. Okay. Candidly, does Davidson want to see what other schools do? No, we don't. Now, if there's something the other school knew about your circumstances that we didn't, we'd want to know what those circumstances were. But if you sent us School A's award and said, will you match this? The answer would be no, that's not how we do what we do. Are there schools that would say, please send us other schools' awards so we can play let's make a deal? Yes, there are schools out there that are willing to do that. You would just need to know who they are and whether or not that's something that they're going to do. I mean, I get this stuff all the time, and I just politely write back and say, thank you for sending it, but our philosophy of making our awards is that we're going to put in front of you the award the student qualifies for, and unless there are circumstances that change that, we're not going to make a change strictly on the basis of some other school's offer. And that's just how we do it. But will you see differences from different? Absolutely, you'll see differences from different schools. But kind of your decision.
When do you accept an award? Like, my eldest daughter
The
got...
second you get it, man.
But they don't know if they want to go
Sure.
to that school.
Okay.
And then they say you have until April 1st, but you only have till May 1st. You have till May 1st to decide on your school. And
Well, okay, now you're getting into some of the practices that we would say are questionable. A school that agrees to the National Candidates Reply Date, which is May 1, for regular decision students, they have agreed through their national professional organization that a student has until May 1st to not only accept the offer of admission, but also the offer of any assistance. So to have an earlier assistance yes or no, as compared to the enrollment yes or no, is a no-no, or supposed to be. So,
can you call them out on it and say
I would.
It's supposed to be till May 1st?
I would say, help me understand why one of these is earlier than May 1. The other one I've seen is the housing deposit. No. Now, you're not committing to the school,
Right.
but if you want a dorm room, you got to send us $4,213 by April 1, or you won't get a dorm room. Well, now you're going to think twice about whether or not I'm going to go there, because I'm putting down money for a deposit. It may not be an enrollment deposit, but it's still money being sent to the school. And we get a lot of those questions. Well, they want a housing deposit. Again, technically, under the spirit of the National Candidates Reply Date, that is not acceptable. Now, do you feel good about calling a school up and calling them out? Only you can decide that. I have called up and called out colleagues. Politely.
Just that, she says yes, and then now somebody, finds out in May 1st that she's going somewhere else. So she's already said yes to all this money, and now...
In theory, she should not say yes to more than one place. That's called double depositing.
Right, no, she didn't say yes to... She said yes to the money because it was April 1st, but it wasn't to accept it. She didn't do her acceptance until May 1st is what school she made.
If you said yes to the money, you've pretty much said yes to the school.
Okay.
I mean, it may not be a formal yes, but you said yes. But there should not be two sets of dates.
Right.
Now, there can be separate dates when it's early decision. That indeed has earlier dates attached. But regular decision is supposed to be the National Candidates Reply Date of May 1st. That's what it's designed to, and it's designed specifically to avoid that oh my gosh, I haven't heard from everybody yet, but I still am being pressured to say something. That's what the agreed upon May 1 date is supposed to avoid.
Two quick questions. Can
Yes.
you just speak to 529 plans and where that money comes in, and maybe grandparent or family contributions?
Okay. All right, so my question back to you, Dr. Parker. Who owns the 529 plan or plans in question?
A parent or a student, but can be transferred to another student?
Okay. So if the parent has ownership of plan or plans, when the parent fills out the student's aid application, they would report the value of the plan or plans as their assets under the asset section. So, and then it's accounted for. So over and done. But what if it's grandpa? Grandpa owns the plan, loves the grandkids, wants to help pay the grandkids to go to college. This is where it gets a little more complicated. So what we've got is, we've got grandpa as the plan owner, but the student as the eventual beneficiary of whatever grandpa distributes. So what happens when grandpa distributes? Okay. First of all, grandpa's data is not on the FAFSA or profile, therefore the value of the plan is not reported there, because there's no data about grandpa. However, when grandpa distributes the money, in the calendar year in which the distribution takes place, that is considered a form of untaxed income to the student for financial aid purposes. So what does that mean? This is where it gets interesting, okay? So let's say that your student goes off to college in the fall of 18, and in the fall of 18, grandpa sends $5,000 from the 529 plan to the college on the student's behalf. When the time comes for the student to report calendar year 18 income on a FAFSA and or profile, they must include that $5,000 as income to them for the purposes of financial aid filing. So they would have what's called money paid on your behalf in that calendar year, and that shows up when that calendar year gets called upon to be reported on the need analysis document. So that's where that comes in. So how much it was worth at grandpa owned, we don't care, but that Johnny got it in calendar year 18, when Johnny reports calendar year 18, that's where the $5,000 worth of money that grandpa paid has to show up as Johnny's resource to be reported. And that's how it would work.
Dave, with the St. Beach program, a grandparent just cut a check for
Yes,
the same time?
actually would be. Doesn't matter if it comes from a 529 plan or just from grandpa, him or herself. If they're paying money on the student's behalf, the student is obligated to report money paid on their behalf for that calendar year. Correct.
The formula that they're using to come up to what they think that you should be able to pay, is that college-based or is that national-based? Because is there a different percentage?
Yes to both.
Okay.
And the reason I say yes to both is on the profile, that is a college's ability to use its formulations and its assumptions. The FAFSA is pretty standard from one school to the next, because that's a federal law. But with the profile being institutionally, since the profile can be institutionally individualized, you could see one school doing X with the data and a different school doing Y with the data. That can happen. Both the glory and the curse of the profile. It gives us individualization, but it also means that school A could look at it one way and school B could look at it another way. And your parent C going, but you both got it and you both came up with something different. Yeah. FAFSA, pretty standard from one school to the next. Okay. Well, I'm going to say thank you for coming out on a Sunday afternoon. I appreciate you doing this. I took you away from the Falcons game, so I'm going to feel guilty in that respect.
Guys, please help me thank you. Only financial aid officer I know who makes it fun.
Okay.
We laugh while we're doing it. So thank you, Anna. Big thank you too for coming out. So enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.
No made-up stories. They're all true.
Sorry.
What year's your student?
She's a junior.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me give you the book, and if you want, if she'd like to get on our mailing list, have her fill it out and ship it in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much
All
for all
right.
your information.
You're very welcome.
So we'd be around Thursday?
No, I'm going to be in New York City on Thursday.
Okay.
There will be people in the office, but I will not be one of them.
All right, very good. Well, I appreciate it.
All right, no problem.
You were here
Thanks for
last
coming.
year, right? Same time?
Pardon me?
Did you do this last year?
Yes. Different, a little bit different time, but I was here last year. Take care.
Can I get some information?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, here, have them complete one of these and just send it to us.
Can I give it to you?
Yeah, I'll take it back from you.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely. Just make sure you put their data on it. That's important.
No, you don't want my data.
Well, the temptation would be to think, oh yeah, I'm the one filling it out, therefore. But no, I'm happy to take this back and we'll get them on the mailing list. No problem.
So you said you had some extra information.
I do.
Interested in data too.
Sure. What would you like? I've got a piece of data, and I've also got this information card your student can complete, or
Okay,
you
we
want
may have already done that. We went up to visit. We loved it.
Okay, when did that happen? You're
Here we
coming?
go.
We may already have him in our database.
August.
Yeah.
I guess we went.
He probably did a card when he was there.
Okay, well.
Did he visit the
We had a tour.
Then I'm sure he did one.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
and he may even have that piece. I don't
Screaming
know.
over the weekend.
All right,
Yeah. Feeling ill.
thank
It's
you.
been a long, from
No
Thursday
problem.
night's
That was a great
Garth
informational
Brooks
speech.
I hope that helps.
concert to Friday night, you know, the announcing.
I heard people weren't really
Must be a
pleased with
Davidson thing.
What's
I
that?
announced the football games here.
I did
On
that.
the public address.
I did that for 22
well.
straight years at Swanee.
And then we have a.
They even gave me a football for my 100th consecutive game.
Yeah, I need to figure out how many it's been. And then a guy named Scoot Diamond, who, God, he's probably 20 years older than me. He's a Davidson alum. He announces for Westminster games.
Oh, okay.
So we kind of have that running. He still does that, even though he's retired now. So, well, thank you. Appreciate it. It was very helpful. It becomes even more applicable when it becomes real. So, anyway. Is this just a form?
Yeah.
I think we're going to do the July. Is it the June or July thing for Davidson alum kids?
It's McNabb program.
Yeah, it's in June. And when does that? Because I know that's like a very popular thing. Is it like?
The alumni office decides when they're going to open up registration.
Is that typically in the spring?
So, yeah, be looking for that.
Okay, all right.
Yes, it fills up really quickly.
Yeah, my nieces did it this past summer. They loved it. So I think I'm just going to try to do that this summer.
Okay. Yeah, that one fills up like boom.
Yeah. Good. All right. Well, thank you,
Usually
sir.
like early June.
Okay. Okay. Good. So thank
But,
you again.
yeah.
Appreciate it very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad you're here.
Outstanding. Yeah.
Glad you came.
We'll work on a new bulb and a new battery for the Latomas. I'll tell you, this facility gets so much use just keeping up with, you know.
Yeah, I think the bulb was overheating or something.
Yeah,
it's
Automatically turning itself off.
We started talking about the numbers. I was like, all right, let's see if we can get it back up.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is Margaret was here. Her husband's in our IT department.
Okay.
So I'm sure he'll hear about it. Thanks again, David.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Here you go.
All right.
They both
Super.
attend different.
No, I will make sure. No, that's fine.
You and Jason would.
I will make sure that we get this back to our friends, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Yeah, my son's interested in baseball, your baseball.
Oh, super.
Good for him.
Well, I mean, I have to be honest and say that when students talk about potential athletics, that it has the coach been in touch with you, has someone from the coaching staff talk to you. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. I know he's gotten some emails about clinics and stuff, but I don't know
Sure.
if he's done anything with it.
Yeah, and and honestly, I don't know where we're going to go in that realm. Now that we won the conference tournament last year and went to the super regionals,
Yeah, you guys are really.
does that change the ante
Oh,
in
yeah.
terms of who we're looking for and who's
Exactly.
interested in us? And all those dynamics now come into play, and you're like, I have no idea what this is going to do. So,
Yes. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
2 more weeks, so I think, okay, let's just have a couple more go, and then if not, we'll just.
And and it all works out, but I certainly appreciate the question. So maybe